Okay, so we're diving into Get Out today. I feel like everyone's seen this movie, right? But what makes it so much more than, your typical horror flick?
I think it's the way it uses horror to talk about some really, really uncomfortable truths about society.
Right, so it's like it's a social commentary but disguised as a thriller. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's like sneaking in some serious stuff under the guise of a scary movie. So, to set the scene, the movie introduces us to Chris, a black photographer who's about to meet his girlfriend's family for the weekend. Her name's Rose, and she's white. They're going to her family's estate, and, well, things get pretty creepy.
Yeah. Even before like the really messed up stuff starts happening,
Yeah.
I gotta admit her family just rubbed me the wrong way. All those little comments like, we seem kind of racist, even if they weren't super obvious.
Yeah, those microaggressions, they're so insidious. The source material actually points out how, those seemingly innocent remarks, like telling Chris he's articulate or well-spoken, reveal, a deeper bias, you know?
It's like they're surprised he's articulate just because he's black.
Exactly.
Like those little comments, yeah, they might seem harmless on their own, but they build up. It's like a constant reminder that he doesn't quite belong.
And it's not even just the words. The overly enthusiastic hugs and pats on the back, they're almost worse because they're trying so hard to be, not racist
Yeah.
that it just comes off as fake and dehumanizing.
And then there's like the whole sunken place thing that was just, wow, so creepy. Like one of those messed up things I'd ever seen in a movie.
It's more than just creepy, though.
Right.
It's a symbol, a really powerful symbol of black subjugation, the loss of identity, the powerlessness.
To be like trapped inside your own body
Uh-huh.
and your consciousness is just gone.
Exactly. It's like being silenced completely. And the fact that it's orchestrated by Missy Armitage, Rose's mom, this seemingly harmless motherly figure who uses hypnosis to manipulate Chris.
I mean, her hypnosis, the coagula procedure, it all boils down to this desire to control black bodies. It's like they don't see Chris as a person, just something to be used.
Right. And it's not just Chris who's targeted. We see Walter and Georgina, the black servants, and they're already trapped in this horrifying state.
Right. Their identities are replaced with, like, the consciousnesses of white people, right? It's so disturbing.
It really highlights the film's exploration of power and exploitation. These characters, who were once individuals, are now just empty shells. It's a terrifying reflection of how black bodies and minds have been commodified and exploited throughout history and even today.
It's like the ultimate violation of your body, your mind, everything. And it makes you think, is this Peele's way of addressing the historical trauma that continues to affect black communities?
I think that's a very valid interpretation. It's like he's showing the psychological effects of systemic racism, the ways in which generations of oppression have created this feeling of, internalized powerlessness.
We see Chris navigating this, like, super white space, and he's obviously uncomfortable, like on edge the whole time.
Yeah, and that speaks to a very real experience for a lot of black individuals, that feeling of being constantly watched, judged, other.
It's not just paranoia, right?
No, it's a commentary on the very real fear and anxiety that comes from living in a society where, your blackness is often seen as a problem.
Okay, so let's talk about the characters for a minute. Okay. Chris, our protagonist, his journey is kind of like a mirror of the black experience in a racist environment, right?
Yeah, he's our window into this world. Smart, observant, and increasingly suspicious of everything around him. And his job as a photographer, that's not just a random detail. It actually plays a huge role in the symbolism of the film.
Now that you mention it, yeah, photography.
Yeah.
It's about capturing the truth, right? Documenting reality. And that's the opposite of what the Armitage family is trying to do with their manipulation and control.
You're exactly right. Chris, with his camera, represents that power to see and challenge the dominant narrative, even when it's a really uncomfortable truth.
So Chris's photography, it's a form of resistance against the forces trying to silence him.
Definitely. It's a tool not just to document the horrors, but also to fight back, to reclaim his agency.
All right, so we have Chris, the black photographer, trying to survive this messed up situation. And then there's Rose, his girlfriend, supportive at first, but then not so much. What's her role in all this?
Rose is interesting. She represents this, insidious form of complicity. She's not overtly racist, but she's totally bought into the system that benefits her.
It's like her racism is hiding behind this mask of being liberal and accepting. But she's the one who lures Chris into this trap.
And that's exactly what makes her so dangerous. She embodies the subtle, insidious ways that white privilege can operate. It might not be violent, but it's just as harmful.
And then there's her parents, Dean and Missy, the masterminds behind this whole, like, messed up scheme.
Mm.
But they're so good at pretending to be open-minded and progressive.
It's like textbook performative liberalism. They pat themselves on the back for having black friends, but they don't even see the systemic racism all around them. Their desire to help Chris with the coagula procedure, it's just a way to control and exploit him.
It's like they see blackness as something to be acquired, controlled,
Mm-hmm.
instead of, respecting black people as individuals. And then Missy's hypnosis adds a whole other level of manipulation to the equation.
Right. It's symbolic of the pressure black people face to conform to white expectations, the subtle psychological control that reinforces the power imbalance.
We've talked a lot about the Armitages, but I want to go back to Walter and Georgina, the black servants. Their fate is just heartbreaking.
Right, they're a stark reminder of the exploitation of black bodies and black labor. Robbed of their identities, reduced to vessels for white desires. It's a powerful indictment of racism.
It's like Peele uses these characters to show the different ways racism manifests. From those little comments to this full-blown system of exploitation and control.
Exactly. He's showing how white supremacy works, from individual bias to the systemic level. It's a reminder that racism isn't just about hate. It's about the subtle ways bias is built into our society.
We've covered a lot, but it feels like we've only scratched the surface. There's so much depth to this film.
There really is. We've just started to unpack the symbolism and social commentary, and there's so much more to explore.
Well, I'm ready to keep going. We'll be back with more insights and analysis in the next part of our deep dive. Stay tuned. Welcome back.
I'm still thinking about, everything we talked about in the first part. Get Out is, really messed up, but also really smart, you know?
It really gets under your skin, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And the more you think about it, the more unsettling it becomes.
Okay, so we talked about Chris's role as a photographer.
Yeah.
And how that's a form of resistance. But I want to hear more about how that connects to reclaiming narratives, challenging power structures, all that. Right. It's like Peele takes this everyday thing, photography, and turns it into this really profound statement. Chris's camera becomes a way to fight back against the Armitage family's attempts to control the narrative, to erase history.
Instead of just accepting the version of reality they're feeding him, he's documenting it, challenging it, exposing it.
Exactly. It's a symbol of truth, a way to counter their manipulation.
Like holding up a mirror, right? Forcing them to see the ugliness of what they're doing.
And it's not just about exposing the truth, but also reclaiming the power to tell your own story. For so long, black narratives have been controlled and manipulated. Get Out flips that and empowers Chris to take control.
That's powerful. And it makes me think about the social justice movements today, the fight for equality, documenting injustice, sharing those stories. It's become such a crucial tool for activism.
Absolutely. Think about citizen journalism, the Black Lives Matter movement, all that. Being able to capture and share images and videos of police brutality, racial violence, it's been so important in raising awareness and demanding justice.
It's like Get Out predicted that in a way. It showed us how important it is to document the truth, even when it's dangerous.
Yeah, it reminds us that we all have a role to play in challenging injustice. We can't be passive. We have to be active participants.
Speaking of uncomfortable truths, I got to ask about the coagula procedure. It's such a messed up concept, but it feels like a really powerful metaphor, for the ways blackness is often commodified and exploited.
It's definitely one of the most disturbing parts of the film. It speaks to this long history of white society profiting from black culture, black talent, black labor. And the Armitage family takes it to this extreme level, they want to literally inhabit black bodies.
But it highlights how that exploitation still happens today, right?
Yeah.
Just in more subtle ways.
Of course. Think about music, fashion, how things that originated in black communities are just absorbed and commercialized, often without any credit or compensation to the people who created them.
It's cultural appropriation at its worst. And Get Out makes us see that. It's a reminder that it's not enough to just appreciate black culture. We have to be mindful of the power dynamics, the systems of exploitation, and work to dismantle them.
Exactly. It's about respect, recognizing the historical context, and advocating for a system that's actually fair.
It's not just about consuming black culture. It's about making sure the creators are empowered and fairly compensated.
Yeah, it's about shifting those power dynamics and creating a more just and equitable system.
You mentioned earlier that Get Out kind of foreshadowed this idea of documenting injustice. I'm curious to hear more about how the film connects to real-world events, specifically the black experience in America.
One of the most powerful connections is that feeling of fear and paranoia that Chris experiences in these white spaces. It resonates with so many Black individuals who navigate a world where they're often perceived as a threat simply because of their skin color.
It's like never being able to truly relax, always having to be on guard.
It's that constant vigilance, the awareness that your actions are always being interpreted, scrutinized. And it ties into the issue of systemic racism, police brutality, racial profiling, the whole system. Get Out creates this sense of dread that reflects those very real dangers that Black people face.
It's not just physical violence either, right? It's also about the psychological toll of racism, the microaggressions, the feeling of being different, the pressure to conform.
The sunken place, yeah, it's terrifying on a literal level.
Yeah.
But it can also be seen as a metaphor for those psychological effects. Feeling trapped by expectations, unable to express yourself.
Like a weight holding you down, telling you you're not enough, you don't belong.
And it's important to remember that this isn't just a Black experience. Other marginalized groups face similar challenges and anxieties.
It's about recognizing that oppression takes many forms, and solidarity, allyship are so important.
We have to work together to create a world where everyone feels safe, respected, and empowered to be themselves.
Get Out is so much more than just a scary movie. It's about race, identity, prejudice, discrimination. It makes you think, challenges you.
It starts conversations, raises questions, and doesn't shy away from difficult topics.
It's a film that will stay with you, make you think, and hopefully inspire you to keep learning and fighting for a better world.
It's a call to action, a reminder that we all have a responsibility to fight for justice and equality.
So Get Out is rooted in reality, in the experiences of people facing racism every day. It's a film that stays with you and makes you want to do something to make a change.
It's about engaging with the film, analyzing it, and then taking action in your own life.
And on that note, I think it's time to shift gears and talk about the mastermind behind it all, Jordan Peele. Next, we'll explore his filmmaking techniques, how he blends social commentary with horror, and what makes this movie so effective. Okay, so we're back and ready to really get into the mind of Jordan Peele. How does he create this movie? How does he make it all work?
Well, it's amazing how he takes these classic horror elements, like the creepy house, the weird family, the sense of danger, and he uses them to deliver this powerful message about society.
Right. It's not just like jump scares and gore. It's deeper than that.
It's about creating this atmosphere of unease, like a slow burn, which I think mirrors how racism itself can be so insidious. Think about those shots of the Armitage house. Beautiful on the outside, but with this hidden darkness underneath.
Yeah, it's like how racism can exist in these seemingly perfect places,
Yeah.
Like hiding behind a mask of politeness.
Exactly. And Peele builds the suspense so well, not through cheap jump scares, but through these subtle things, these little moments that make you feel uncomfortable.
Like that feeling that something's wrong, but you can't quite put your finger on it.
Which is exactly how Chris feels. Peele puts us right in his shoes, so we experience that same paranoia and vulnerability. And speaking of Chris, we have to talk about Daniel Kaluuya. He is so good in this role.
And he's amazing.
He brings so much depth to the character. You see his intelligence, his humor, and then that growing sense of dread.
It's like you can see him trying to figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
Trying to make sense of this crazy situation.
And the rest of the cast is great, too. Allison Williams as Rose, she's both attractive and terrifying at the same time. And then Bradley Whitford and Catherine Keener as Dean and Missy, they're perfect as those, liberal parents.
It's like they're almost the caricature of white liberalism, but also they feel so real.
And Lil Rel Howery as Rod, Chris's friend, he's so funny.
Rod is the best.
He brings the comic relief, but he's also that voice of reason, the one who sees through the family's act.
He's the one saying, get out of there. But nobody listens to him. It's like he's the audience, We're all yelling at the screen.
He's the skeptic, and his humor is so important because it lets us laugh, even though the movie's dealing with some really heavy stuff.
It's like Peele is saying, yeah, this is messed up, but we can still find the humor in it.
Okay, so the ending. What did you think of the ending?
It's so ambiguous, right? Like, does Chris actually make it out? Does he survive? We don't really know for sure.
I think that's deliberate. It's Peele's way of saying that the fight for racial justice isn't over. There's no easy solution, no guarantee of a happy ending.
So it's not just about Chris escaping. It's bigger than that.
It's about the systems that need to change so this kind of horror doesn't keep happening. And it's about us, the audience, confronting our own roles in those systems.
Get Out is such a layered film. It's funny, scary, thought-provoking and disturbing all at the same time.
Yeah, and it all works together so well. It's really a testament to Peele's talent as a filmmaker. He can mix genres, tackle these complex issues, and still make a movie that's entertaining and smart.
It's a movie that makes you think, makes you question things, and I think it's going to be relevant for a long time.
It's a movie that demands to be discussed and debated, and it doesn't give you easy answers.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into Get Out, I think the big question is, how does this movie make you feel?
What resonated with you, and what will you do differently now?
Yeah. Get Out isn't just entertainment, it's a call to action. It's a reminder to challenge injustice, fight for equality, and work towards a world where everyone can be safe and free.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.